Good morning, guys. I would so love to encourage you today from Ephesians 1:5. But before we jump into that, I want to talk to you about the life of Noah because I think it directly connects to the concept that God is revealing about his character and his heart for us in Ephesians 1:5. So I know that we all have heard the story of Noah. Anybody that's never even cracked the Bible open knows there was some sort of big boat that a lot of animals jumped on. So we don't need to talk about the actual story of Noah today. It's really this one verse that I read a few months ago when I was doing my Bible reading plan that really had me pondering. And it's from Genesis 7:1. It says, I have found you righteous, meaning good, in this generation. And that was God talking to Noah and telling him that he found him righteous. And that was the reason he was going to save him and demolish everybody else. Now, what I was pondering is, Lord, how could you be calling Noah righteous? Because what I know from Romans, and I lost my bookmark, Romans 3:9-12 says, no one is good. No one in all the world is innocent. No one has ever really followed God's paths or even truly wanted to. Everyone has turned away. All have gone wrong. No one anywhere has kept on doing what is right, not one. So, if no one is righteous, that would include Noah. How could God be calling Noah righteous? We also know in 2 Corinthians 5:21 that there was one man who walked this earth who was righteous, and that was Jesus, because he was God. He was perfect already, and he did everything perfectly. And it said that God made him, meaning Jesus, who had no sin, to become sin, that we might become righteousness. So, Jesus was perfect. Jesus was the only one who can be called righteous. There's actually many other verses in the Bible besides that 2 Corinthians verse that support that very notion that no one has done this right. Jesus is the only one. It is through him and in him and by him that we can only be made righteous. And God is a loving Father, and he had it in his plan all along to make us righteous. So here we're going to connect the dots to Ephesians 1:5, where it says, his unchanging plan has always been to adopt us into his own family by sending Jesus Christ to die for us. He did this because he wanted to. So we see that from the very beginning that it was God's plan to wrap us into Jesus Christ and make us good and make us perfect, to make us righteous, and keep relationship with us. So that still leaves us to say, okay, Jesus died, wrapped us in, we're made righteous. How does that apply to Noah? He lived and died before Jesus ever came to the earth. Well, there might be all kinds of different theological things about God being outside of time, but I don't even think we have to go mind trippy there to have this make sense to our minds and to our heart. You see, God is a loving God, and he is a relational God. He wants to be in relationship with us. And so I believe that all of the people that came before Jesus ever died on the cross, if they were in relationship with God and they truly loved him, even though they didn't live perfectly and they still sinned and messed up, that God in his loving kindness grandfathers them in to the sacrifice that Jesus made on the cross, grandfathers them in to the victory and what Jesus accomplished by raising from the dead again. And he calls all of those lovers in and says, I am saying that you are righteous, and I am applying what Jesus did on the cross to you ahead of time before it's actually played out. And so Noah could be called righteous by God because Noah loved God. And how do I know that Noah loved God? Well, in Genesis 7:5, it says Noah did all that God commanded. So that had me pondering. There was a lot that God asked Noah to do. And if you really think about it in terms of if God were to come to you and say something like that, it was pretty weird stuff. I mean, building this enormous boat that all these animals were going to come on. I mean, Noah had to have a relationship with God where he had built trust and love to know that, okay, this task that you're asking me to do is huge, and there's things in it that I cannot physically accomplish, that God's going to have to make this stuff happen. And just trusting, Noah had to trust that God was going to partner with him to help him accomplish the task that God was asking him to do. But the big thing that I see when I was pondering about this is that the ark wasn't built in just a day or even 30 days. It took years and years and years for him to build this ark. And then even while, it was raining and all of that, took days and months and long time for this whole thing to play out. And so, in my own life, I recognize that if I am doing something merely out of duty or like trying to earn love from people or from God, it's not very lasting. And so to me, for this to sustain for Noah over lots and lots of time and years, Noah had to have this relationship with God where he knew that he was loved by God. And out of the abundance in his heart, in Noah's heart, of love back in response to the love that God was pouring out on Noah, he obeyed and did all that God commanded. You see, radical obedience has to be linked to being radically loved. And so if you find yourself struggling with obeying or wanting to do the things that you want to do, I would suggest that there's places where you just haven't been able to receive the love of the Father to really do what you're wanting to do and what you know God wants you to do out of a place of obedience. It requires being truly loved. And so my encouragement for you today is to recognize first that from the beginning of time, God had it in his heart to adopt you, to bring you into his family, for you to be fully loved and made perfect in him. And from that realization, I pray that you can open up your heart to receive the fullness of God's love for you so that you will be able to radically obey him. Because the things that he is wanting you to do is to be loved by him and to love well. And for us to really get to a place where we are being radical world changers, changing this world with his great love, we need to be first loved well by him. So I bless you. I bless your spirit. I bless your mind, will, and emotions with opening up today to experience God's love in new, deeper ways so that you can be loved and that you can be loved to others. Have a great day. Bye.